So my name's Nick Baggett. I'm a course director for Chartered Institute of Marketing. I'm here for a couple of days, like Jim, and running two sessions over each of the 2 days. In the morning, I'm running a session on the changing face of marketing communications, and this afternoon I've got with a wonderful title of "Unleash Your Potential." Wasn't my title. Hopefully will help you to unleash your potential in the next 30 minutes. What this particular session is going to talk about is the changing consumer behaviour. So how consumers are starting to use different channels, particularly Web 2.0, what that actually means in terms of changing use of the internet, and how brands need to adapt to that. What the implications are for marketeers, and also how to create a long-term relationship. So we're looking about relationship marketing strategy and how that interacts with web strategy, so that the long-term effect is that you can develop relationships with customers over a long period of time. And how do you use digital channels to do that? So how do you acquire them into a program? How do you get them to participate? How you deepen the engagement you have with the consumer, and ultimately how you turn them into advocates who are going to recommend you and use word of mouth to say how wonderful your brand is to other people. So we're going to talk through a bit of kind of theory around that, and what I think the implications are for you as marketeers. And then what we'll go on to in the second part of the session is a very, very brief introduction to some of the digital channels which you may not have used. So I'm not going to focus on things like email that you're probably all doing at a great extent, or web, and search. There's a completely separate seminar on, so I've kept off search, apart from where what I'm going to talk about will influence search. And things I'm going to talk about are more like blogs and communities and those sort of viral activity, the sorts of things that you perhaps aren't doing so much all the time at the moment. So just to kind of kick off, what's happening in the world as we stand at the moment? There's lots of influences. Jim's just talked about looking at kind of marketing planning structure and what are the influences over the way brands behave. And I've just picked out 3 of them, which I think are really key to what we're going to talk about today. One is audiences are more fragmented. So it's harder, the mass traditional media, advertising, PR, etc. It's much harder to reach the numbers of audiences that you wanted to reach to before. And most of the brands that I work with tell me that the effectiveness of TV advertising is on the decline, as it were. One of my clients, who's a big global conglomerate who produces everything from food to personal care items, shampoo, etc. They have a way of measuring their advertising effectiveness on a global level on a score out of 5, and the score has fallen significantly over the last few years. So they're looking to spend more and more of their budgets with digital marketing communications. My major client is Microsoft. I help them with their digital marketing strategy. And Microsoft have brought in a program called Digital Ignition this year. Digital Ignition means that by 2010, 50% of all their marketing budget needs to be spent online. Some countries, and this is global, so some countries at the moment are spending 0 or 5%. They've got to move all their spend online because they can see the online is the future of their activity. So, audiences are more fragmented. Consumers are much more informed. If you want to go and buy a digital camera, you used to go into Dixon's and ask the sales assistant, who probably started work there 5 or 6 weeks ago and isn't particularly knowledgeable. Now you've got lots of places you can go, not just the Kodak or Nikon or Pentax websites. You can go to comparison sites. You can ask what other people bought. You can ask for recommendations. So people are much more informed, and people trust other people's opinions more than they necessarily trust the big brands now. You're seeing a change in the way that people buy, particularly think about booking a holiday, people using things like TripAdvisor on Amazon. You know, people like you bought this book and they recommend this sort of book. Those consumer reviews are becoming more and more powerful. So consumers are more informed, it's harder to reach them, and you can turn off the ads, of course, as well. If you've got Sky Plus, if you're in the UK, if you've got a web pop-up blocker, you can turn off the advertising as well. So all of those things have led to a situation where digital marketing is becoming more and more crucial. There are other factors as well, like how easy it is to measure activity, how you can use behavioural segmentation with digital, which you can't do so easily with other channels. But these are kind of just 3 I wanted to highlight. So what does Web 2.0 actually mean? So many people are going to talk about Web 2.0 at this college. So this is my view on the world as it stands. This is the old world, and this is the new world as we're moving on. I talk about one thing I do want you to think about over this session is that don't throw away all that knowledge, all of that marketing planning knowledge that you've built up over the years, all the measurement you've had, all the strategy, everything you've learned in marketing is still relevant. Okay, there's nothing you should throw away from that. What I talk about is the old rules, but with some new tools. Okay, that's my phrase for the day. So old rules, new tools. Just remember all that stuff you've learned historically, and just think about some new tools and some new opportunities that you've got. So let me just take you through what I mean by these differences. So traditional marketing is about interrupting people. They're watching the TV, they're quite happily watching the show, you burst in with your TV ad in the middle of the show and hope that they'll watch them. What I'm talking about is consumer activity that will engage people, that will invite them to come to you and to start to involve them in the communication, to not interrupt what they're doing and then go back to what they were doing beforehand, deeply build up engagement. So instead of pushing communications at people, we're looking for them to pull communications from us. So instead of people viewing our content, viewing our advertising, viewing our marketing messages, we want them to participate in those marketing activity. We want them to comment on it, rate on it, provide videos, provide photographs, do whatever they can to get involved with our brand. People also talked about when the journalists love saying, well, the problem with all this internet age is that all the kids are going to be sitting at their computers, they're not going to be involving other people, they're just going to be sitting there not interacting with other people. Well, actually the opposite has happened. They've built these huge social networks, a Facebook generation of people that are sharing content. My son, who's 12, is addicted to a game called RuneScape. I don't know if anyone knows RuneScape, online multiple player gaming site where he goes off on quests with a guy from Japan. He meets this guy in Japan all the time. They go off on quests together and do stuff together. They never met, but they met online, effectively, and they play this game together. So one of the implications of that is that historically, brands were the authority. If I wanted to find out about digital cameras, I went and found out what Kodak, what do Pentax think. Now we're not interested in authority. We're not interested in brands broadcasting their message. What we're interested in is what do people recommend. You know, why do eBay have so much stall around the seller's recommendation and the points that you get for being a good salesperson on eBay? So brands aren't in control anymore. Brands should be focusing on co-creation, allowing consumers to do things. One of the things I often do is if I talk to a brand for the first time and they say, oh, we're not really involved in all this digital stuff, and I said, how many videos have you put onto YouTube then? I said, well, we don't really have any videos on YouTube. I said, well, let's just search on YouTube and see what we find. Did this with the police recently. I did some work for Surrey Police. And they said, there was no videos about Surrey Police on YouTube. I said, just you wait and see. Put it in the search, 50 videos come up. Not put on by them, put on by consumers. So people are making their own views of what the brand stands for based on that co-creation of their own content. So for measurement, we used to talk about running a campaign, and then when it's finished, we measure it. 3 months later, we get the results. And then we plan our next cycle. The great thing about digital marketing is you can do it in real time. If I want to change something, if I find that no one's putting the credit card details in on my site when they register, I can change the page tomorrow and see what happens the next day. So you can adapt and learn much, much quicker. If you want to set up a podcast, you put it onto iTunes, see if anyone downloads it. If nobody downloads it, take it off. You know, so you can do things much quicker. Marketing in Microsoft, they talk about increasing the velocity of execution, the speed of execution. That's why one of the key things why they want to do a lot of digital marketing. And then finally, from a traditional dialogue where brand speaks to you by sending you something, you might respond back. If you're lucky, you speak to them and they respond back, and it's very one at a time. We're now about kind of deep relationships. We're trying to understand what content people want, how we're going to engage with them, how we're going to personalise that experience for them. So that's kind of the opportunity for you, but it's obviously quite a challenge. So I'm going to try and help you through some of those things. Really scary diagram. Sorry about that, but it's there deliberately for